And we are live. Amazing. Thanks everybody for joining us. And I believe Dave. Thanks for joining us.
What's up?
I believe you can hear us. With us, we got people from all around the world. Let me check this. Can everybody hear us, sees us? Amazing. People from all around the world joining us with a lot of questions, Dave, today. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for joining us during those weird times. A new webinar with Mix with the Masters. I think we have a lot of questions to answer for this next 60 minutes together. Thanks, Dave. The incredible Dave Pensado is here with us today to answer some of your questions, everybody.
I don't know how incredible I am, but I'm here. You want to get started? Are we going?
Yes, I think it's a good start.
Okay. I'm gonna reward some of the early entrants into the forum. John Wright asks, Dave, thank you for doing this. Can I ask how you and Herb are and what you've been doing to keep well? Well, I'm the wrong person to ask, John. I went through a really crappy time period in March, and I struggled, actually. If you want to know the truth, that I couldn't get out of bed for a few days. And I realized that I was just being oversaturated by media. And there's no facts available because everything is kind of like a moving target, and all the data is moving. And so I just went to a tailspin. And then I set up a little studio like you can see behind me. And it all went away. And Nika Hamui and Jackson Rao and all my friends kind of came over, helped me out. And once my speakers came into the room, I was instantly cured. I'm not making that up. It was crazy. So my advice would be just try and get back to normal work as soon as possible. It took me about 10 days to get my studio to sound where I could actually use it. But now I'm rocking and rolling, and people like what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm back to 100%. I try to exercise as much as possible, go out in limited amounts. But anyway, hope that helps you, John. Connor Wallace asks, hello, Dave. Thanks a lot for doing this big ITL. What is the best thing you've learned lately? Here again, it's a philosophical thing, John. I read an article about creativity, and it said when you start doing something creative, and I assumed he meant mixing, something like mixing, because that's my creative endeavor. And if you start something creative, don't try to be good. Just try to be bad. Just do it. And I thought, what a stupid thing to say. And then I talked it over with my assistants, and we started trying, or I started trying it, and so it really works for me. It cut my mix time by about 30% and made it probably 10% better. So what happens with me is, like, let's say I'm working on a kick drum. Well, I might spend. It's not unusual for me to spend 45 minutes on a kick drum, and then I move on to other parts of the mix, and I'll be changing and tweaking that kick drum the whole time I'm mixing. So now, rather than trying to get it to completion in one step and take 45 minutes, I just like 3 minutes, get it close and move on. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you can figure it out, that's really a big time saver. So hey Dave, all the information I've been able to learn from you over the years is priceless. Thanks for sharing. Oh, that's not a question, but thank you, Ma. Oh, here's one below. Okay, Ma. In my opinion, their voices are the best I've heard. I'm missing something here, Ma. Let me see if I can figure it out. You're very good at this. I would like you to share a little bit of your approach to this in a mix, like vocal chain and vocal effects. Okay, I'm going to try and get all this done at one time, because this is going to be a long question. So I think it's an important question, so we'll spend a little bit of time on it. Um, to me, vocals are probably the hardest thing for me to get the way I want to get them, because the variance in microphones, like no 47 sound alike, no 251 sound alike. A lot of the old preamps, everybody likes 1073s, but a lot of those aren't really up to par. And then I get distorted vocals, I get clipped vocals, I get all kinds of things. And what I try to do initially, Ma, is I try to have, as I'm working on the track, most of the times for hip hop and pop and R&B, I'll work on the usually I'll work on the track first unless it's a slow song, then I'll work on the vocals first. But I always go back to the rough vocal and to make sure that I'm leaving room for it as I'm working. I'll bring it in and out, and as I do that, I'll start tweaking it. But the vocal is the most important part of the mix, because in today's world we tend to use programmed drums, and a lot of times, more often than not, the level of the kick drum in the intro is the same level of the kick drum in the last chorus, and so there's not a lot of movement in the drums. So another subject is I like to create some movement in the drums, but we'll stick to vocals. So if you think about it, you've got a level platform volume-wise, and so that gives you an opportunity to increase the feel of the dynamics in the vocal. And so I'll manipulate every syllable to enhance the performance of the artist. And that's probably the most important thing I do, and it's not unusual for female artists to get emotional about it, because it really does make a big difference. And guys, we don't get emotional, so of course, But anyway, that's a very important part. I'll give you I'll give you a couple of things I use on vocals. I usually start my chain with a thermionic culture vulture. Either a real one or the UAD one is excellent. And all I'm trying to do is just the word distortion is a bad label. But basically, what we're doing is we're saturating the signal with more harmonics. So distortion is another word for a collection of harmonics. Now, it can be ugly, it can be pretty, and then you have to learn the difference between even and odd harmonics. Even harmonics will give you octaves up, and odd harmonics will give you something else. It can vary. And so I try just to get enough to where that second octave is coming in. It gives a weight to the vocal. So that's good. Sometimes I use the UAD VSC on vocals, but not that often. One of my go-tos on vocals is Clariphonic by Kush. I'm blessed to have Greg give me a real one to check out, and so I haven't returned it yet. 5 years later, I use it a lot. I probably my more often than not, I can get what I want from my EQ. My EQ kind of was born out of stereo bus needs, vocal needs, drum needs, and bass needs. And so that's where I usually find it feels the most comfortable and the most at home at. And so the settings that I've selected for you to use in that EQ are the settings I tend to use the most. So I don't know if that's an advertisement or just a good piece of information, but you can decide yourself. I like the Massenburg, particularly the new one, version 6, Massenburg MDW. I like that a lot. I use the Shadow Hills a lot. One of my go-to staples since it came out is the CL1B to and oh yeah, you know what? I use the virtual mix rack by Slate a lot. I loaded up with the 116 compressor, and it's a blue one, and I always hit button 2. So just remember that button 2, and then I feed Revival into that, and I use that judiciously. Revival is an interesting plugin because sometimes it doesn't work at all, and sometimes it makes the vocal come alive. So I have that sitting in place. Excuse me, before the 116, and then I have the air EQ, the high band, and I control a lot of the sibilants with that. Um, um, you know what? Let's go a little deeper. So effects that I use on vocals. You know what? I'm gonna save the effects for one category. And what I'm trying to do is get the vocal to command the track. I visualize the lead singer on the stage, and there's a bright spotlight on him or her, and when that first verse comes in, it's like they're 5 feet back from the mic. First verse comes in, about to come in, they sprint to the mic, grab it, like, and choke it like they mean it, bend it over a little bit, crunch over, and sing the first line of the first verse, which to me is the most important part of the vocal in the entire song. If we don't grab them on that first line of that first verse, they're never going to hear the chorus. So that's kind of the way I think about that. And then I do a lot of automation. I do very little compression. I do very little limiting on lead vocals. If we run out, if we have time, I'll go into backgrounds because I do 100% different on backgrounds. Okay, let me see if I can keep flow. Okay. Oh no, for sure. I hear you perfect. Yeah. How about me? Okay.
So
You got a
earlier we
little
were we
quieter
were
on
trying
my end.
to we were trying to get a better audio and video, everyone. So now we're back.
Okay, good. I'm ready to go. All right. Um, so I don't know where we left off, but I always want to give back more than I'm given in life with everything. So having said all that, um, I study the rough. I have a 30-minute drive each way to work. Uh, the drive to work is usually listening to demos and things of upcoming mixes so that I can not only learn and get ideas about what I think I can improve, but also I want to make sure I don't screw up something I like because that can happen just as easily. And so I do that on the way to work. And so that's that time I give to my career. Then coming home, I like to come home late at night and I like to roll the window down and I like to do 80, 90, 100 miles an hour and with the wind blowing through the car and turn my radio up as loud as I effing can. And then so I get out of the car and get home and my ears are ringing. If I forget to turn the volume down, and I crank the car up, it comes back at the same volume, and I'm like, man, how did I listen to it that loud? But man, that's why we do music, you know. It's cathartic. It's sustenance. It's everything we need for a good life. And so I try to pick elements in the mix that I think are I can build on. Like a lot of times it's a keyboard, and so I'll look for a keyboard that has a waveform that goes start to finish, or anything that goes start to finish, and then I'll start working there. Sometimes I'll start with the keyboard. Sometimes I'll start with all the drums except for the kick at the same time, and then sometimes I start with all the drums and the kick, and those all go to one auxiliary track. Sometimes I separate the kick if I need a real aggressive kick, and then from there on it's like think of a block of marble that's 4 feet by 4 feet and 8 feet tall. That block of marble is delivered to your studio, and there's a sculpture inside that block of marble somewhere, so you got to take off all the marble that you don't need to reveal the sculpture. And that's kind of the way I think about mixing. I try to take a block of marble, and I hear the mix final in my head, and so it's just removing all that excess marble, all the things that we don't need, and then polish up the marble and all that kind of stuff. You can extend the metaphor any way you want. So anyway, I hope, Raymond, that blithering, rambling explanation helped you a little bit. Connor Wallace with a K. What is your mix bus? Oh my God, you guys are asking me questions that are so lengthy, and I know I was going to get this one, so I wrote it down. The Mod EQ4M, the real one, always finds a spot on my mix bus. My EQ, I use it probably about on everything, and it sticks around probably for maybe 70%. But I put it on late. And then Gullfoss always makes it on my stereo bus, Gullfoss. The Weiss maximizer, that was Nick Gazowski popularized a lot of the Weiss catalog of equipment, and I always loved his mixes. So if I've got a ballad or something that I want to have a unique type of emotion, I might put that in the chain. I use Low End Focus by Isotope, and it's a pretty new plugin. It's a game changer. In fact, that plugin and Gullfoss are probably good preparations for getting ready for what future plugins are going to be in a couple of years from now. They don't make decisions for you quite yet, but they take some of the process away. And in my mind, I want to be fully creative when I'm mixing, and I don't even care if I'm on this plane of existence or not. I want to be wherever the creative elements are. And anytime my analytical mind takes control, which is for all of us humans most of the time, it subverts the creative mind. And so the more I have to think, the less creative I can be, because our brains are not designed to go quickly from the analytical mind to the creative mind. And so these tools I think, are future tools. So Gullfoss, check it out. Low End Focus, check it out. That's really good. Taupe, Taupe, from Acoustica. I use that a lot. And Metric AD is always on the next last thing on my stereo bus. And I reference a lot. I pretend like I'm on a playlist because can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so we're ready? So metric AB, I try to do a little fake playlist, and so I'll play 1 through 12, and then I'll play my mix, and then I'll play a few more to see how I'm sitting in. And if you didn't hear me, I get insecure sometimes. So um, um, that's about it on my stereo bus. Um, let me look here. Um, I was given my friend Michaela Canova gave me a little real-time analyzer, and it's actually the last thing on my stereo bus. And it's made by TC, and I got addicted to it. Like it's just so much fun to play games with yourself, and you think you found the frequency, and then you look at the RTA, and sure enough, that's the frequency, And so it's kind of fun. I don't think it's good to rely on RTA too much. I think the exception to the rule might be if you're hearing something at 40 cycles and 50 cycles. For me personally, those frequencies were harder for me to learn how to distinguish. It took me a long time, probably 10 years, to figure them out accurately. And every once in a while, I'll miss it, and so every once in a while I cheat and look at the RTA myself. Okay, let's see. Sarmad Ghafor, Ghafoor, cool name. Let's see here. If I can get my screen cleared here. Was there ever a time when you weren't happy with your mixes? How did you deal with it? Sarmad, there's never been a time I'm happy with my mixes, unfortunately. I've tied the quality of my mixes to the quality of my life, and please don't ever do that, anybody, because it's really not the way to be, but it's all I know, and that's just the way I am, All I know is music and science, really, because my dad had a good science background. My mom was a gifted musician, as was my grandfather and great-grandfather. And I think that everybody's different, and I'm so blessed to have had quite a few assistants go on to be top of the list, and I've learned something from every one of them, and some of them are more confident, some of them are less confident, but they're all great. And I mean great, I mean like consistent top 10 great. And so I don't know that that's really that important. I think we're all different. Please don't tell any of my clients this, but sometimes I get sad when I finish a mix. That's how much I enjoy it. So I don't know that I'm ever really fully comfortable with my mixes. I don't go back and listen to anything unless I'm unless I'm showing off to a client or something. I might go back and play something old, but when I'm in my own time, I don't really listen to my mixes, my old mixes much. Every once in a while, I'll hear a mix of mine on the radio, and I might do a version for me, and that'll be the version I listen to. Liam Hickey. Liam. Let's see. I lost my place. You know what? I did something that screwed me up. Okay, Liam, I'm just about to get you back here. How do you know what a vocal should sound like? When I try to EQ, I think sounds good, but then it's awful compared to commercial. How do you know? Liam, great question. I hope you were here. I hope you were here. I I don't have a camera button in the middle. Oh, I see it. Okay. Okay. Is that better? Check test 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, we'll just do that for that
Okay,
question
so
for
you
now.
want to leave it off?
Pick better audio.
Victor, are you there? Okay. Uh, let's see. Yeah, Liam. Um, I think early in my career, I referenced a lot, which is a polite word for rip people off, and so I tried to rip off different vocal sounds that I liked as a before I became an engineer, and and then you gradually you get the tools and the skill to do it much quicker and much quicker and much quicker. Don't feel bad if it takes you 2 days to do a vocal. When I first started out, a mix that I would play the client would take me probably a week really. I was working for free when I first started my career. I did hundreds of free projects because I didn't think I was worth getting paid. You know, everybody hates. There's a couple of answers we all hate, and when I was learning, I hate it when people said, "Just use your ears." I didn't have any ears. What I can't. How the hell am I supposed to use my ears if I'm only been doing this a month? I don't have any ears yet. And then the other one is just trust yourself. Trust yourself. I didn't trust myself. It took me forever to trust myself. So there's just try and find projects that you can suck at and get information back. And one of the things I did right was I always had somebody putting pressure on me when I was mixing, whether it was free or not. And that kind of made me get better. I hope I'm answering your question, Liam. I really tried. Um, uh, Samad's trying to squeeze in another question here, but I like the question. Did your mixing improve over time, or were there breakthroughs? So I'm guessing what he means is um, did I get gradually better, or did I get better in steps? Well, it was all over the place. I would get I would get I would get good in chunks. I never felt I was getting progressively better. I felt like I had different levels that I would reach, just like going from one mountaintop to another mountaintop. And sometimes I went through severe valleys where I doubted if I should keep going. And luckily, I was surrounded by people that cared about me in terms of the engineering community when I was starting my career in Atlanta. And so, yes, for me, reaching different plateaus and try think about this. Try this. Look at a picture of yourself. Well, first of all, look in the mirror and don't look at a picture of yourself. Look in the mirror. Then grab a picture of yourself on your phone from 3 years ago, and you'll go, damn, I've really changed because your change was so gradual you didn't notice it when you look in the mirror. And that's the same way with mixing. Luis Fernandez, Dave, I just want to say thank you for all these years of sharing your knowledge with us. Luis, I, 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 I get more from you guys than you get from me. Trust me. The way to get things in life is to give things. Um, Evan Vickery, hi Dave. When clients are delivering tracks to you, do you ask them to send the full session in Fruity Loops or Logic, as well as stems? Do you then convert the audio to different sample rate, bit rate, all that kind of stuff? Uh, Great questions. The only thing I might think about changing the sample rate on is if I get anything above 48, like if I get a 96, I'll lower it to 48, mix it in 48, then bump it back up to 96. And I don't know why, but that sounds pretty good. I've done some comparison with 96 mixes, and I think the type of music I do, which is a combination of hip hop and R&B and pop. I like 48, but if it's 44, I like. I don't like changing anything really. I think you get into remix mode when you start changing anything. Let's see what else was he in his question. Iwan said, "Well, what I like is I like to have the session sent so that when I hit play on the session, it sounds like the rough mix. 10 years ago, I used to throw the rough mix in the trash, but nowadays, you have the same tools that we have, and so the rough mix. I've said this so many times, and a lot of people have said it, but it bears saying again. 10 years ago, we added our vision to the mix, and so we would ask for clean sessions. Today's world, we now finish the vision, the mix part of the vision for a mix. So 10 years ago, I would work with a producer and we would change a lot of different things to finish the mix. Now, the mix is mostly finished because producers, almost all the producers are pretty good mixers. And so my job is to finish the mix part of that vision. So I try not to change too much. Now, if I think that something can be improved, and by improved I mean can give us more energy, can give us more vibe, can enhance the groove, can convey the emotion of the singer better, I'll go for it. And I'll have two. I have the original, I have mine, and when I play the mix for the client, I'll play it with his ideas, and then I'll ask the client, can I play you a couple of ideas? And I'll go, yeah, sure. And then we keep some we don't keep, and some give the client a better, they'll have a better idea than mine being triggered by my idea. That's the way I try to work. Doesn't always happen that way. D minor official, D minor, saddest key ever, right? Hi, Dave. What is your approach when you DS vocals? I hate DSing vocals. I usually, my first choice is to draw them out with clip gain, and then I can control the energy. The way I think, and I learned this from a legendary music executive, a guy named Ron Fair, and Ron was a gifted musician, a gifted producer, string arranger. He was more than the CEO of Apple, of A&M, and more than the CEO of Geffen. And we had a lot of big hits together, and a lot of number ones together. And I learned from him that if you look at the waveform, it's a tight little football type waveform visually. And what that means is that could be thought of as a concentration of energy. Now, you want to use that energy. So if you DS Mariah Carey too much, or DS Ariana Grande too much, one of those types of singers, you lose some of their energy. And so I probably leave more of a sibilant sound than most people, because I think that's where the energy comes from, and I get a lot of compliments from singers. A lot of singers really like my vocal sound. I think it has to do with not killing all that energy that's there in those sibilants. Every once in a while, I'll put the old classic gray Waves de-esser, the original one, and I'll put that last in the chain. I won't change any of the settings. I'll just knock off about a dB and a half, just kind of to catch the ones that got a little out of control. Sling Sound Studio. Hey Dave, you're a blessing. Can you explain your NS10 monitoring tricks? What is the best advice for experienced sound engineers? Sling, about I guess about 10 years ago, Jason Joshua said to me, hey Dave, if you want to do modern records, you need to use modern tools. I thought, damn, that makes total sense. So I stopped using my NS10s about 10 years ago, and boy, what a withdrawal symptoms I went through. because I'd been using NS10s at that point in time for 20 years. I got one of the first pair that came in Atlanta, and it was a bit of a struggle. I kept them in the control room so I could make sure that I was doing okay. But I ended up gravitating towards some KRK 8Ts that Ron Fair gave me, and I thought I was making better, more modern sounding records with those. And now I use my incredible Asperger's that Dave Pensado at Pro Audio Design makes, and I use the little MTMs. I don't know if you can see them over my shoulder by IK Multimedia. I use Amphion's. I use the 8Cs by Dutch and Dutch, and I use my ref tones. I love my ref tones. So rather than answer your question directly, I'm going to give you an oblique answer, and that's the answer is I retired my NS10s. I actually gave them to the owner of the overall building that my studio's in. Let's see. First of all, thanks, Raymond. I appreciate the compliment. Dimitri, can't tell if that's a B or an S. Anyway, Dimitri, I won't go with the last name. Dave, big thanks for being there. I appreciate it. What hardware do you love and you don't want to live without for mixing? Well, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, but I brought my Cush Mark II Clariphonic home. I brought my Eclipse home, which is pretty much parked on a preset called Real Chorus. My EQ4M by Moog, and my Spacecraft by Dr. MS. The Spacecraft from Dr. MS is a game changer. I would email him and say, Dave said, help me out and give me a price, give me a good price, and see what you can get, because I put that on all my music auxes. I have 5 or 6 or 7 auxes that I mix the whole mix down to basically 7 master faders, and then I can manipulate those in and of themselves. So mostly I'll raise the level of all the music and guitars and synths, and when I lose the groove, I'll lower it. When I find the groove, I'll leave that there, and then I'll do it with and without the vocal, and you get different levels both times, and so it gives me a chance to kind of rebalance the mix, so the Spacecraft lives on my music aux. It's incredible. What it does is it widens things, but it's like nothing you've ever heard. Some runners up are the plug-in Dr. MS, Sidewinder by Joey Sturgis is incredible. Anything Joey Sturgis makes is incredible. Just buy it. You'll use it and you'll find uses for it. I've got a lot of favorites, a lot of plugins I use a lot. It's him. He's one of us. He knows how to make plugins that really work for us. Nugent makes one that's really good. I know I'm leaving somebody out. All of the MS stuff by Plugin Alliance is probably as good as you'll ever find. Cornbread Jr. I got a feeling we know where Cornbread's from. With clean vocal, by the way, I grew up in combinations of Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and California. With clean vocals, how do you get a parallel grainy vocal that give it texture like a cigarette smoker or a raspy voice? I hope you were here earlier. I kind of use Culture Vulture for a little bit of that. There's a lot of plugins that are good for that. One of the most popular is Decapitate, and it's probably one of the best. I tend not to use it as much because it's so great that I hear that sound a lot, and so sometimes most of the time I want to be a little different. But experiment with saturation, what could be called distortion, and coloration of different types. There's so many good things out there. Just go on any forum and ask the question. You'll get some great ideas, because I know I'm forgetting some. But great question, Cornbread. Great name. Let's see. Jagoda Sadowska. What a great name. Hi, Dave. Thanks for doing this. I know sometimes you split bass. Could you please talk about it a bit? Where do you usually split? What is the compressor you like to use on it? Kind of a specialized question, so I'll do one or two of those, because I don't want to run out of time. I'll stay here for a while, so don't panic if we go past an hour. I'm sure I will, if Victor and the boys let me. I'll go as long as I don't have to pee. There you go. So we'll stay there for a while. And by the way, at my age, I pee a lot, so don't get your hopes up. Usually what happens with bass sounds is there's several components, and so the first thing you analyze is this bass contributing harmonic components like subs, like sub frequencies, and like roundness, and filling out the frequency spectrum. Is this bass actually contributing to the groove? Or just ask yourself, what is it that this bass is doing to my mix? And I usually wait till later in the mix to split it up. And so if I find that the low end is there to just give me warmth and girth, for you people that by the way, English was my second language, so I'm not being insulting when I say this, but if you're new to English, some of these expressions don't work. And so width and weight is a better word. You want that low end for weight, and then you want the low end to play nice with the kick drum, and those frequencies is where I split, and so I have two tracks with the low frequencies of the bass and the high frequencies. What I want from the high frequencies is to contribute to the groove, and so sometimes I split it at around anywhere from 200 to 800. Usually lower, and then the top stuff I always tend to kind of low pass, so I'll take some of the high frequencies out, and then I widen the higher frequencies to a point where I can find a slot for them to be in. Sometimes I like them outside the speakers. Sometimes I get a stereo bass and I might move them to maybe, if you look at the stereo spectrum as a clock, where it's 12 o'clock would be the center. Sometimes I like to put them at 1 o'clock and 10 o'clock. I mean, not 11 o'clock, sometimes 2 and 10, sometimes 3 and 9. And so it allows me control over two elements, the groove elements and the weight and low end on a bass. Karaoke Academy, hello. Michael Gromley. Hey, Dave, just wondering what you think separates amateurs from professionals in business and sonically. Well, I'm the world's shittiest business person, so I've always surrounded myself with the best of the best in terms of management, in terms of lawyers, in terms of business managers, in terms of friends that are in that space, because the less I have to think about anything but mixing, the better my life is. So in terms of sonically, I think that amateurs are too quick to think that there's a shortcut to getting a full skill set and having success. And there are no shortcuts. Some people, I've had assistants that went from 0 to 100 in 9 months. I've had them that took 8 years. And me, myself, I took the long path because I wasn't really trying to be successful. I was just wanting mix records. And actually, when I first started my career, I wanted to make records. So I thought my record making contribution was going to be on guitar. I had a lot of success on guitar, and then I accidentally made it into a studio, and I realized, wow, this is my life's calling. And so I don't play guitar much anymore. But I would do whole sessions. So like I would track the session. I would kind of co-produce it. I'd play on it. I'd mix it. I'd master it, and I did that probably for free. Or in today's money, I might make enough money to pay for 2 days of my rent. Hardly anything at all. And I was happy as a pig in shit. It was just so much fun, and every day I learned something new, and I was having #1 records out here in LA, and I didn't even know you could put something on the stereo bus, and that's after 15 years of just, struggling in Atlanta. And so I think everybody has a different pathway. I didn't have an opportunity to go to school because I didn't have enough money for that. I went to college for 8 years, so that was my school reserve for money. And go Tigers. But I think it's different for everybody else. If your goal is to get wealthy, it's going to be tough to do it. It's going to be tough. If your goal is to be a successful engineer and create really good product and move the genre forward and all that, the journey is much more fun than the destination. Like when I drive to Las Vegas, most people it takes anywhere from 3.5 to 4 hours. I take 8 because the drive's more fun than getting to Vegas. Like there's extinct volcanoes off of the 15, and so I'll drive out there and spend 2 or 3 hours looking at those volcanoes. And I love geology, by the way. And so for me, mixing has always been a journey, not a destination. And I don't recommend that. In fact, I don't ever give advice. It sounds like advice, and it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. I really don't. I can give you opinions all day long, and then I advise you, that's advice, to talk with other people and get different opinions, and then synthesize all those opinions through who you are, through your time period, through your generation, through your tastes, through your hopes, your dreams, and then that filter will kind of give you the answer that you're looking for in terms of opinions and advice. I'm pretty sure I'm not making any sense at all, so you guys bear with me. I'm trying. Alex Zellen, hey Dave, man, we got some great names going on here. I like this. Alex Zealand, excuse me. I thought I saw 2 L's. Hey Dave, thank you so much for doing this. Do you have any advice for giving weight to a vocal while also keeping it clear and upfront? Yeah, oddly enough, I do. What I've been doing a lot of, heavily inspired by Jason Joshua, who got a tiny bit of inspiration from me. So we share a lot of information between each other, and Jay is like my older brother. He's way more mature than I am, and what I've started doing is if I want to add some, like, let's say some 400 to 600 to give some roundness to a bass. I mean to a vocal. What I'll do is I'll take and EQ a little bit of that range out of the vocal, not add it, but out of the vocal itself. Now I'll parallel the vocal, and on that parallel, you can either do it as a send and return, or you can either make a copy of the original track. It's the same thing. And so on that parallel track, I will get a bell-shaped curve that only lets the frequencies between that I want, like say 400 to 700, I'll only let those through. So I've high pass and low pass the entire vocal, and only thing that we're hearing on that parallel track is 400 to 700. And then I'll put something like RVox or a saturation type plug-in, or like Futzbox, or something to give that a little color, and then I'll parallel that back into the vocal. And so I'll end up with a little more than what I took out, but I don't have to fight what's already there and create phase problems and other stuff. And anytime you're EQing anything, you have to always look and listen for phase problems. That's a 2-week course in and of itself, phase. But I do the same thing with kick drums. I do the same thing with vocals, lead vocals. And anytime I've got an important component of the song that carries a lot of weight, rather than just flat out EQ it. Now I EQ it some. The important frequencies I'll add back in, but with color. So. Let's see, forget where I left off. You know what I'm going to do in the interest of time? I'm going to skip down a little bit. I'm sorry that I'm going to skip past a couple of guys, but I don't want to punish the last guys that were coming into the process. Here's a name that caught my attention, Manu Local. Hey, Dave, thanks for taking the time. Happy face. Question regarding top end overload. On which elements do you regularly cut top end, and which elements really need to keep top end information? Well, depending on the source material, I look at frequencies as how they contribute to the groove, the vibe, the emotion, all of those intangible things. I very rarely look at frequencies as something to put in or take out. I always have a reason for doing it, and that reason usually is to either give me a more impactful groove, to give me to enhance the performance, to give the mix kind of a bigger than life feel. I don't like subtlety in mixing. I'm a Trevor Horn fan. If you listen to Owner of a Lonely Heart, before you get to the first verse, you hear his influence on me. Where any little thing like you know, or a swell or anything, I like them wrong loud, because people don't really hear them, and you got to make sure they hear them. And so, for example, on like, let's pick a vocal where the vocalist has a lot of high end, and they're pushing a lot of air through their vocal cords, and that's where a lot of their energy is, and a lot of their emotion is, and we know singers like that, because most singers do that. And so that like 6K to 12K, you have to be real careful with that frequency, because too much and it gets brittle, too little and you lose the emotion. And so there's a technique where maybe you can use a multiband compressor and just compress those frequencies gently, so you can keep them as loud as you want, but when they get too loud, that compressor kind of handles them. You're probably thinking, well, why don't we just de-ess it, Dave? Well, de-essers, to me, are more like attacking, designed to attack a more severe problem. We're not trying to remove anything. We're trying to control something, and I think multiband compressors are good at that. And same thing with the area from about 1K to 3K. That's where all your energy is. That's near the middle of the Fletcher Munson area. So those are frequencies we're sensitive to. So take advantage of that psychologically and maximize that as much as you can without making the vocal harsh. Now, if you're working in the rock genre, you have to manipulate those frequencies, and you have to take out a lot of the other ones because you're fighting guitars, and guitars are inherently in the same frequency as vocals are. But if you've got a ballad, you can enhance, you can take some of those frequencies out, and like say an R&B song, you handle the frequency spectrum different, and then a rap song where you've got to convey power and strength, but you also have to be able to understand the lyrics, and so there's different ways you work on that. I was working on a Korean project early in my career, and I literally de-essed the vocal, and the client said, when you do that, it changes the meaning of the words, so please don't do that. and I thought that was pretty fascinating that a de-esser could actually be used for different words, you know. But it led me to start thinking about, well, wow, if it can do that, it can actually, those high frequencies can actually do other things. Let's see. The Spectra sessions. Dave, is there any value in starting a mix in mono? I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question for. I'm not really one to follow anything anybody says is the right way to do things, because they don't move up on playlists, and I like to be different, but I like to be good different. And so if a mono mix follows one of my mixes, they're going to go back to my mix. They're not going to listen to the mono mix, because it's just a different world we live in right now. We monitor completely different than we monitor our music back, 10 years ago. Hey, Victor, I just moved, so I can't see myself. Let me know if I'm still in the middle. But there are times when mono works. There's several mixers out there that are really good at mostly mono mixes. It sounds like an insult, so I'm not going to name names, but the person that's the best at it is one of my top 5 favorite mixers. But mono has a use because it's the most important part of the stereo spectrum, and I'm very careful about what I put in that area, and so I try to leave it for the main elements, like number 1, the vocal, number 2, drums, if you're doing certain types of music, and instruments if you're doing others. So I try to have a mono mix with a lot of stereo stuff going on along the sides. That's what I try to do. I hope I confused you totally, because I think I just confused myself. This looks like a good one. Hi, Dave. How do you create space between elements in a mix? And do you have pre-saved effects auxes from previous sessions, or create? Well, you might not have heard me earlier. I have auxes that have inactive plugins on them, but not so much for anything to remind me that I have those plugins, because sometimes I forget what plugins I have. But I don't really have pre-saved effects. I've got a couple of reverbs that I like, that I might have a preset to start with, but I always change things. I made a list of some reverbs that you might want to take a look at. I'm gonna go slow, because every one of these and delays, every one of these reverbs and delays find their ways into my mixes. The new Eventide 2016, I use the original hardware unit, hard to keep working. I still have mine from the day I got here to probably 2010, maybe, so maybe 20 years. But the plugin is incredible, the new Eventide plugin. There's several prior versions, but I use a preset called Stereo Room on vocals. Incredible. Sonsig, Sonsig. It seems to make its way into a lot of my mixes. UAD Capital Chamber. It's a game changer. It's really, really good. Valhalla Room, Valhalla Vintage Verb, Rematrix is really good. RMX 16. Sometimes I use delays as verbs. Sometimes I'll use the Korg 8000 by UAD or either the real one. And I love the EchoSign delay that's a version of the delay that Pink Floyd used. I can't remember the company. It begins with a B, but EchoSign. The Valhalla delay is incredible. The McDSP delay is incredible. I use all of those. So hopefully that'll give you a head start on something there. Let's see. Beat Supremes, good evening. He's not where I'm at. He must be over there in France with Victor and Maxime and the boys. Beat Supremes, good evening. No question. Rich Miller, thanks, buddy. Tobias Nelson Maki, the quality of Dave's video is pretty bad. I'm a lot like Sasquatch. Sasquatch, people think is non-existent because the pictures are always blurry, but actually he himself is blurry. The pictures are actually fine, so that's the problem there. But thanks for saying it, because I'm yeah. Let's see. Frida Lapore. Dropped my notes. Hold on. No, I didn't go anywhere. Just bending over. Frida, glad to have you on board. Hi, Dave. Thanks so much for this webinar. May I ask what's lately on your mix buses, plug-in wise? Any new cool suggestions, discoveries? Frida, just for you, I'm going to repeat a couple of things real quickly. Check out Gullfoss, Gullfos. Check out an EQ by a brilliant man named Pensado. I think it's called Pensado EQ. I like Intensity by Synaptic. Amazing. I use that a lot. Low End Focus by UAD. And then my Moog EQ4M, my Clariphonic. Those will get you started. Those are good places to start. Ethan Ramsey, hi Dave, thanks for doing this. I wanted to know. He said is, but it's. I wanted to know. Oh, is the famous Isotope Ozone Mix Bus preset yours, or did Jason give it to you? I guess you're talking about Ozone. You know what? I would say that Jason came up with that. I think that was during a time when we were working together, and I can't take credit for it. But I'm pretty sure. Just to be safe, I must say Jason came up with it. It's like something he would come up with, so I'm sure he came up with it. Let's see. MF, and we all know what that stands for, MF, so you're not fooling anybody. How to do it, the mix sounds louder in the streaming services. So I'm guessing he means how to make things sound louder in streaming services. One of the things that I did was I tried to reach out to some unnamed people in the tech staff for some of the streaming services, and I asked them if they could give me some help in trying to figure out how to get my stuff a little louder. I'd say the first thing to do is understand the process the streaming service uses and the algorithm they use to determine what gets lowered in volume and what doesn't, because Spotify, Tidal, Apple, they're all different. And Apple tends to be the outlier. And they'll actually change the requirements without even letting you know. So you have to stay up on these sorts of things if you're doing this for a living. But there's a couple of things that tend to be universal. Most of them either directly use an LUFS scale or either a modified version of that. And so understand how LUFS works. It's a time-based measurement. So if you're working and you're looping a bar, then you'll get a different LUFS reading as opposed to playing the entire song for 3 or 4 minutes. And so let's use Spotify as an example. If you take the drums out of the intro, if you have spots in the song where you don't have any drums, and then maybe a breakdown, a bridge with no drums, well, you can get an extra bit of volume from the algorithms, because it only measures when it averages all those readings over time, is what I'm trying to say. And if you look at the frequency spectrum that those things are based on, like do a mix, and this is a test mix, and then put it on Spotify, then do another mix where you jack up, let's say from 500 to 3-4K, and you jack it up stupid, and then see what your LUFS reading is. You'll be able to find the frequency range, because the LUFS scale doesn't work from 20 cycles to 20K cycles. You know, it has a Fletcher-Munson priority, and so try to get your mid range as powerful as you can, and then try to deal with some of the transients that can affect the algorithms without actually affecting the sound that you want. And there's always frequencies, particularly in the mid range, where that same frequency is in the top end of your bass, it's in your synth, it's in your vocals, it's in your background vocals. So try to coordinate between those frequencies, and don't let everyone contribute those frequencies, but try to find the ones that are the most important, and then reduce it in the other ones. It's a process. It's horrible. I hate it. I love hearing my stuff on streaming services, but you just wish that what you sent out would come back. Let's see. Sul Son. Hi, Dave. You said you started your career in Atlanta and made the transition to LA. Would you say that location still plays a factor today? What I would say is a prophet is always disrespected the most in his own backyard. Sometimes it's not where you are that's the problem. It's you that's the problem. I got to a point where I was real frustrated, and I felt like I was, after years and years and years, I felt like I should be thought of as being a little better than worth nothing. And so I surveyed the landscape. I don't understand snow, so I didn't want to go to New York. At the time I left Atlanta, country music was still something I liked and enjoyed, but I didn't feel I was good at it. And so that left LA. And so I drove out to LA, not knowing anybody. I was living in my car for a little bit, and kind of worked out, you know. So I think it's such an individual question that I really can't give you a definitive answer. I think the corny way to say it, that's equivalent to the trust your ears saying, is trust your soul, trust your heart, trust your frustrations, trust your ability to make sacrifices. You know, I mean, if you want to, like when I came out here, I wasn't really thinking too much about where I was going to live. I figured I could figure that out later. Well, it took me a little bit of time to figure that out, but I just wanted to be here, you know. Everybody's different. It's up to you. It's up to your goals. But if you're like me, and I'm not giving anybody false hope, sometimes a change of place is a good thing. It was for me. Let's see. I want to pick some at random now. MF again. I'm going to answer this. Did you make a video about widening 808? Tell us about it. I think I did. I think Jason and I were talking, and Jason Joshua. If I say Jason, it's Jason Joshua, and my dear, dear friend. And we were talking about his 808s, and he was talking about how he felt like if he just moved them out from the center a little bit, that it would be more impactful. And I would study his use of 808s. I think it's as good as anybody out there and better than most, if not all. And you need a reason to do it. So I think I did. I don't think I did a good job of the explanation, but I did a good job of the usage of it. So yeah, I think that'll help you. Let's see. Victor, is Laz Zaro, is that the last question?
Seems like it's a very last question.
Okay. Anybody else that's listening, if you can, particularly if you're a lady or a girl that's trying to start in this wonderful career opportunities, hit me up. I want to be fair. I want to ask some more questions by the ladies. In the meantime, Speechless, I like that name. What's the best way to get more clarity in the sounds of a mix? Well, as you do this for a while, you'll notice that sometimes if you take out the frequencies, say between 250 or right around 250, give or take a half octave, that your kick drum will get louder and have more top end and more punch and clarity. And so sometimes I don't like the term carving out or those kinds of terms. Sometimes if you have a frequency that's masking another frequency, which is a good term for that, because that frequency is there, but when you take the frequency next to it out, that frequency gets louder. And so policing that concept on every track will give you clarity, but it might give you a mix with no warmth on the bottom, no roundness on the bottom, you know. And so everything in mixing, a lot like everything in life, always has another effect. You never get anything for free in mixing. It's always at the expense of something else, and so you're balancing a tolerance for those something else things. So if you high passed every track, if you cut the low end on every track, you'd have a lot of clarity, but you wouldn't have very good mix. So it's in manipulating a lot of things. Sometimes you can do it with EQ in terms of adding frequencies. I'm a big believer that clarity is not enhanced by doing too much on your stereo bus. It can take away clarity. It can take away a lot of things if you do too much. If you do just the right amount, that changes from song to song and genre to genre. Like for example, the EDM genre uses a little more compression than say the jazz genre. But it's a process, and start with that concept of trying to unmask the higher frequencies, and experiment with adding a little more top frequencies to individual tracks, and then high passing some of the tracks that are contributing a little too much of. Think of what you really need from that particular sound to give you what you're looking for, and then get rid of the rest. That's probably the best way to think about it philosophically, but implementing that concept, just practice it a minute. You'll get it. Did we get anybody yet? Connor back again, Peter Maxwell, Sherman Blankface. Let's go with Sherman. I heard you talk about how different presence frequencies and high-end frequencies generally define different eras. Could you describe those eras, frequencies, and what frequency era are we in now? Oh, what a wonderful question. Absolutely right. A lot of hip hop, if you put too much high frequencies in, they'll say you're getting to be a little pop. But a lot of hip hop today is proud to be a little bit pop, because pop's another word for I made a crap load of money. And so you'll notice that there's two factors right now in the hip hop world: the ones that use high end and the ones that are still using like 90s sounds. And both are right, and both are having success. I think that we're getting past a little bit of the extreme high end in the pop world. I think that the hip hop world is in a transition. Some factors like it brighter and some don't. The alternative movement, like alternative rock, alternative hip hop, they're going brighter, definitely going brighter. And think of another genre, R&B. R&B is not your granddaddy's R&B. I get requests to sound like Marvin Gaye. When I sound like Marvin Gaye, they tell me it's too dark. So I think we're getting a little brighter there too. And on the low end, you can't have enough low end in today's world. I've been mixing some projects for what's notoriously known as a rock label, and the reason they hired me, I think, is because they knew that I couldn't control myself. I had a lot more low end than it really needed, but they liked it, to my surprise. And I think the whole world is heavily influenced by the hip hop community now, in such a way that you've got to have a little more low end on everything. And these types of questions and these types of answers can be dangerous. I don't listen to music for a living. I listen to music because it's like eating. I got to eat, and I got to listen to music, and I'm blessed to be able to have a Sirius XM radio. And I said earlier that I have a long drive to work, and so I don't, like I say, I don't try to listen to keep up or anything. I just like listening to music, and mostly I'm listening to hip hop and what I consider like really well done pop music, and some of the new R&B is really, 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 really reaching me, and I'm liking it. But over time, you'll hear a song that's real popular right now, and then they'll slide in a song from 2017, 2016, and you're like, damn, we were really dark back then. That kick drum sounds a little wimpy, and the vocals are too mixed in the track. and and so it just comes from just immersing yourself in music. Um, I don't think there's a technique. I think it's just you just hear it, and just have a feel for it. And not only that, but you have a feel for like 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 I'm known for having the ability to say, "Hey, man, guitars are coming back." No, they're not, man. You're crazy, but they came back. And then I predicted that we were going to get a lot more EDM into the pop world. And when I say I predicted it in my own mind and to my assistants and my friends. But anyway, um, let's see. Dominic Grant, our reference mix is a big part of the process. Hell yeah. Let's say you're running the 100-meter dash in the Olympics and you decide not to check and see who who's running the fastest time. So you'll have a benchmark to know what to. And so you get to the Olympics and you're running say a 10.7 and the top guys are running like a 9.2, 9.1, and you get to the starting line and Usain Bolt just leaves you in the dirt. You might want to go back and add a little bit of referring to the times of the other racers next time you enter a race. And I, 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 I said earlier, hopefully you heard it, but if you didn't, I reference more to see how I sit in a playlist with different types of songs. So I might be working on a real pretty ballad, but I might be referencing Little Baby, or I might be referencing Ariana Grande, or I might be referencing Khalid or something like that. And I use references not to copy something, but to see how I sit within the framework of and compare to those. If my energy goes down, I'm gonna keep working on my mix. If my energy goes up when I go from a reference to my mix, then I look at it to make sure that I didn't go overboard because it's easy for me to do. I don't like subtlety in mixes, and and so it gives me a barometer of more intangible things than actual things. A lot of times, all of these things are controlled by volume, not by EQing or compression or anything. But yeah, I reference a lot, Peter. Hope that helps you out. No, that wasn't Peter. That was Dominic Grant. Sorry, Dominic. Um, let's see. You know what I'm going to do, guys? With your permission, and I'm just going to philosophize for a second. First of all, I I think let's see. Uh, I'm hitting every button here. Let's try this. Uh-oh. Yeah, there we go. Damn. Um, cool. So, is anybody still there? So I was going to philosophize. Um, I think that we need to always keep in mind that, like, let's look at athletics. There's some people that no matter how much their passion is, they want to be a center in the NBA, but they might not have the height. They might not have the stamina, and not everybody is going to be a top engineer. Um, I think everybody can find an area in audio that they're good at, and some people are good at mixing. Some people are good at post production. Some people are good at mixing movies. Some people are good at mixing hip hop. Some people are good on and on and on and on and on. So so until you have the ability to sample all these different opportunities in audio, be careful about getting too deep into one particular compartment of the audio spectrum. It's good to learn as much as you can, and if you're 17, 18, 19, 20, you've got the time to try some different things. But don't just assume because you went to school and your passion is mixing that you're going to be able to earn a living at mixing. It's a pretty tough road. It's doable because you look at me. I'm doing it, and um, I just want to make sure that I do the right thing by trying to get some people into being engineers, and I want to do the right thing by making sure that people don't spend time at something they're not going to be able to sustain, and then you've given 10 years of your time to this, and now if you had started today working at a corporation, you might be the CEO of that corporation by now. But 10 years from now, if you don't quite have what it takes skill wise and patience wise and all these other things, then in 10 years you're going to be starting from zero. So I try to make sure that I'm honest with people, and that I let you know not everybody's going to be Manny American or Jason Joshua. Um, um, you know what I'm saying? The top guys, and then sustaining life at the top is just as hard as getting to the top. So um, it's a profession that doesn't necessarily require sacrifice, but if you look at a top athlete, they're usually the first in the gymnasium, and they're usually the last ones out. And the top guys probably are the hardest working guys, but they have physical skills. They have a lot of things. So passion is not the only marker that you want to look at in terms of what you're trying to do with your life or your career, but also look at your tolerance for different things and different opportunities. For me, I did it all wrong. Um, I I I I probably did everything wrong, but I had a high tolerance for failure, and um, I just kept going. And I think the recording guys felt sorry for me, gave me a bunch of number ones when I first moved to LA. I don't know why they didn't like me when I was in Atlanta, but Atlanta now is a different place than when I left 30 years ago. Gee whiz. So anyway, I just want to share that with you and make sure that this is really right for you. It's probably, in my opinion, the greatest opportunities that have ever existed in the audio engineering facilities genre is now. We have spectacular tools we've never had before. We have opportunities we've never had before. You can sit at home with a laptop, a couple of plugins, a decent microphone and have a number one record. It's incredible. It's incredible the opportunities that are out there now. But test the waters and always be looking for opportunities to the left and right. Like I said, I thought I was put on this earth to be a guitar player. One day I looked over to the right and got invited to a studio and never left. I didn't know that I could do it. I didn't think that I was good enough. And but always be looking for other opportunities as you're going along. All right, and then also too, I'm gonna in the late '80s or in the '80s, I read a magazine article with Bob Clearmountain, who was one of my heroes and influences. Hugh. Okay. So I'm gonna leave you with this. Um, I read an article in a magazine, audio magazine, by Bob Clearmountain, who was one of my big influences. Hugh Padgham and Steve Lillywhite were the other two, and he said that he took some 400 out of his kick drum. It was either 300 or 400, but he took 400 out of his kick drum. So I'm engineering for about a year. So I started taking 400 out of every kick drum I did. Well, the paying projects I were getting, they fired me because they didn't think that I should take 400 out of their kick drum. And going back and looking at it, I realized I ruined the kick drum sound, but hell, I had to leave it because Bob Clearmountain did it. And I learned a lesson early on that I want to share with you, and that's just because any of us that you trust to get information from, whether it be me or anybody else, don't take 400 out of your kick drum. Have a reason to do it, and don't just blindly listen and think that because this engineer does this, that's going to make you successful. Mixing and sound is a moving target. It's not a static target. So when you copy whatever they said and whatever I said, it's long gone in terms of usefulness because your song might be completely different. Your genre might be completely different. And so be super, super careful. And when you cruise around the internet, try to get advice from people that have actually done something. There's a lot of people out there that are really good at giving you information, and there's a lot of people that aren't. If you want to be a Formula One race car driver and go around the track at 200 miles an hour, and you're taking information about how to do that from a guy that's never even sat in a race car, you might want to think about not going 200 miles an hour when you get to that curve because you're not going to make it. And so take a little time and get your information from people you trust. And there's thousands of them out there, and you can tell the ones that have been around a track at 200 miles an hour, and you can tell the ones that haven't but still have useful information. They're not trying to make money off of you. They're not trying to do these other things, but they really have shared some information that they learned and it works for them. And I think that's a valid person to listen to just as much as the 200 mile an hour guy. But be careful about the information you get because it can slow you down as quickly as it can speed you up. And I learned that the hard way. But Bob Clearmountain's a friend of mine now, so it worked good. Hey, listen, guys, I can't thank you enough for putting up with me. And what a great way to spend a Sunday here in Los Angeles, hanging out with some friends. I hope I answered most of your questions. If not, I hope we get together soon. And I really appreciate the respect and the time you took to sit and listen to me. It makes me happy, and it's fun to share stuff. And I hope you get that particular virus, the virus of sharing love and sharing the things you've learned is a good way to conquer the virus that's currently giving our world some problems. And stay safe, amigos, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you,
Adios.
Dave. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks everybody for joining us today. That was an incredible Q&A. Thanks, Dave, for doing it. Guys, keep on learning. Stay home. Stay safe. And join us tomorrow. We'll be welcoming Tom Lord Algie for a webinar at 7 p.m.
Oh,
GMT, 12 p.m.
yeah.
PST. So thanks so much, Dave.
Yeah.
We'll speak soon and
My
stay safe.
pleasure.
Bye bye.
Okay, say hello to Maxime and Maxine's dad, and thank you so much, Victor. I'll talk to you soon, amigo.